What if I told you there's a text, a 2,500-year-old blueprint that some believe maps out the entire sweep of world history? I mean, from ancient Babylon right up to our near future. Well, today we're diving into that exact idea, found in the Prophecies of Daniel.
We're going to break down this incredible series of visions that, according to one major interpretation, lay out a super precise timeline of global empires. And it's a timeline that stretches from a world that's long gone right into what could be our own future.
Okay, so first things first. We have to get our heads around a key concept that basically frames this entire prophecy. It's called the times of the Gentiles.
So what does this actually mean? Well, think of it as the era when the center of global power shifted away from Israel and into the hands of non-Jewish, or Gentile, nations. And in this view, it's not some vague period. It's a specific timeline that kicked off with a conquest thousands of years ago and is still going on today.
Now, you got to get this straight because the source material is very clear here. This geopolitical timeline is not the same thing as a totally separate theological idea, the fullness of the Gentiles. One is all about earthly kingdoms, politics, and military power. The other, that's about the spiritual story of the church. Two different things.
So, the first piece of this whole puzzle, it starts with a dream that absolutely terrified the most powerful man on earth at the time, King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon. He has this dream about a massive statue, this Colossus, made of 4 different kinds of metal. But here's the catch. He wakes up and can't remember it. So he tells his wise men, "Don't just interpret my dream, you have to tell me what I dreamt first." An impossible task, right? Well, the story goes that only the prophet Daniel could pull it off.
So Daniel comes in and lays it all out. He says the statue is all about 4 world empires that will come one after another. And it starts right there with his king, Nebuchadnezzar, as that absolute ruler, the head of pure gold.
And here's the kicker. This is not a story about progress. It's not about humanity getting better and better. In fact, it's the opposite. The metals actually show a steady decline in value, in density, in stability. The interpretation here is that this symbolizes a degeneration of empires over time, moving from one-man rule toward weaker, more divided, and brittle forms of government. Kind of makes you think, doesn't it?
And look, according to this view, these empires aren't just wild guesses somebody made centuries later. The claim is that the book of Daniel itself either names them outright or points to them so clearly that it creates this undeniable prophetic roadmap.
Okay, so fast forward about 48 years. The story picks back up, but this time it's Daniel himself who has a vision about these same 4 empires. And wow, is the perspective different.
And this, right here, is one of the core ideas of the whole prophecy. What the king, representing humanity, sees as this glorious, powerful, majestic statue, the source says God sees as something else entirely. Something, well, monstrous.
So instead of that shiny statue, Daniel sees 4 terrifying beasts clawing their way out of the sea. Each one lines up with an empire, and each one tells you something about its character. Babylon's speed and power, Medo-Persia's raw, crushing force, Greece's lightning-fast conquests, and then Rome, this beast that's so uniquely destructive it's just described as dreadful and terrible. But then, on that final beast, the one for Rome, something new pops up. Among 10 horns, this little, seemingly insignificant horn sprouts up, and it's arrogant. It takes out 3 of the other horns, and it has the eyes and the mouth of a man, speaking great things.
So who is this little horn? Well, the interpretation is that this figure, who wasn't even visible in the king's dream, is an intelligent, bold, and blasphemous future ruler. He's the one who will show up in the end time and go after the saints, a term used here for God's people.
Okay, so we've got the empires, we've got this future villain, but what about the timing? When is all this supposed to happen? Well, the next piece of this prophecy is presented as something like a master clock for all of history.
This is known as the 70 weeks prophecy. It lays out a timeline of 490 years, split into 3 sections, and it's all laser-focused on the history and the ultimate fate of Jerusalem and the Jewish people.
Now, the structure of this thing is what's really wild. The first 69 weeks, which comes out to 483 years, are said to be history. They're done. Then there's a pause, a long, undefined gap in the timeline, which some believe is the age we're living in right now. And after the gap, there's one final week, a 7-year period left to go.
And it gets even more specific. To prove that the first 69 weeks are fulfilled, the source actually does the math. It converts the 483 years into prophetic years of 360 days each, and it lands on this exact number of days. The claim is that this maps perfectly from the day the decree to rebuild Jerusalem was given, right up to the very day that Jesus rode into the city on Palm Sunday.
So that gap we talked about, it's a huge deal in this interpretation. It's the key to explaining why that final 7-year period hasn't happened yet. In this view, our entire modern era, thousands of years, is tucked inside this prophetic parentheses. It's like history is holding its breath, waiting for the final act to begin.
All right, let's put all these pieces on the table. We have the statue, we have the beasts, and we have the timeline. So how do they all lock together to define these times of the Gentiles?
And check this out. When you lay it all out side by side, you see the complete picture. Each of the 4 great empires gets a dual symbol. The shiny metal version from the king's human point of view, and the ravenous beast version from, as the source says, God's point of view. It's 2 different visions describing one single storyline of history.
So how does it all end? With a bang. The whole system of human government, this whole towering statue, is brought down in an instant. It's not a slow decay. It's a catastrophic demolition that strikes right at its foundation, the feet of iron and clay.
And just to be clear, this stone isn't interpreted as some slow, gradual process or a vague spiritual idea. Nope. The source identifies it as a sudden, physical event, the literal second coming of Christ, who establishes a kingdom on earth that completely replaces all others and brings the times of the Gentiles to a dramatic, final close.
So there you have it. From a forgotten dream of a terrifying statue to a complete timeline of world history, this interpretation of Daniel's prophecy gives us this really detailed and, let's be honest, controversial map of the past, the present, and the future. Whether you see it as literal history, a powerful symbol, or something else entirely, you have to admit it's a compelling blueprint that has fascinated people for centuries.